Welcome to the Kingdom Podcast, featuring Commissioner Christine King, where all voices are heard.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Kingdom Podcast, where all voices are heard. I am Christine King, Chairwoman of the City of Miami Commission and your District 5 Commissioner. Today on our show, we have the City Manager, Mr. Art Noriega V, who's going to be here talking about how he manages 5 elected officials, our budget of $1 billion, and all things City of Miami. Welcome, Mr. City Manager. How are you today?
I am absolutely fabulous. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I've been, a little anxious about getting on the podcast because, I have some esteemed guests on this podcast. So the fact that you sort of slumped a little bit and went with me, I'm super excited about it.
It is not a slump at all. It is not a slump. You're
Lowered
quite
your standards a little bit. Yeah.
No, you are quite the man in the city of Miami. You have quite the resume. You were the president CEO of Miami Parking Authority for how many years?
20 years.
For 20 years.
Yeah.
And you built that agency up, and they are doing fantastic things, revenue for the city through parking. Explain to us your life as the president CEO of MPA.
So that agency is very unique in that it's incorporated into the city charter, right? And it has very specific responsibilities, but they don't really just park cars. They are almost a redevelopment agency for the city too, because they do a lot of redevelopment, a lot of mixed use. And so besides being an income stream, it's also been an agency that over the years has been able to take assets it has and redevelop them into mixed-use projects, which add value beyond just parking revenue. There's revenue generated from the project as well as tax revenue and the economic development opportunity there too, because with those mixed-use projects come jobs and construction opportunities. So it was a unique organization. There's not anything like it anywhere in the country. Forget the city or state of Florida. So it was an absolute pleasure to be connected to it for as long as I was, and we certainly grew it considerably over the 20 plus years I was there as CEO, and then I was also there for almost 2.5 years as the development director. So for me, I have a lot of pride. It's a legacy thing for me, and something that I'll always be connected to. You spend what will in essence be the significant majority of my professional life in one organization. You're sort of tied to its DNA, which was awesome. So,
Exactly. I feel the same way about MLK EDC. As much as I try to divorce myself from that organization, I cannot help myself continuing to say we as if I'm still there and I'm not. So I get that. And the MPA has done some great things. I didn't know it's the only one of its kind in the U.S., but we have a lot of stories like that, like the mental health facility coming on board, the only one in the U.S. of its kind.
Judge Leifman's facility?
Yes, the only one of its kind in the U.S., which is a game changer, and is why Miami is the magic city.
Yep.
Because we really care for everyone. Those who can't, we look out for them, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So what made you, and there's some who think you may have lost your mind, leaving MPA and becoming the city manager for the city of Miami? What were you thinking about then? Because we can be a cantankerous bunch, can't we?
Yes. So
you were supposed to say no.
Once I was diagnosed, well, we present company excluded. How about that?
Thank you.
There is a sort of thought process you go through as you get a little further along in your professional life, and I'm sure you've done it. You self-evaluate a lot what you want to do, what your aspirations are, and they change as you get older. And I had done so much at the parking authority that I was ready to take my professional life in a different direction. And I had a good relationship with the mayor, and I had always told him, look, I'm here as a resource for you, whether you need it internally or externally. He was experiencing there was a lot of turmoil with the prior manager and some of the elected officials in the commission. And, I offered him, hey, look, I'm willing to be a resource to you. I think I can help. Sort of funny because that's exactly the way I phrased it. And then later he used the how can I help reference. And it made me reflect on that, because part of it is, you sort of feel sometimes like you have an obligation to serve your community. And although I don't live in the city has been a huge part of my professional development, my personal life, and a lot of aspects of what I've done both, at work and in my own time. And I thought, look, this is my opportunity to leave with an impact on the city that I had been serving already for an extended period of time, and really address some of the issues that were really occurring at the time, try to create some unity, try to really put the city in a position where its elected body and its administration are working in concert with each other versus, in conflict. And it was a little, I got questioned a lot, got a little bit of that, that head bob of, are you sure you want to do that?
Right.
But in the end, I don't regret the decision at all. And I went into a situation that ultimately within a couple of weeks flipped 180 degrees with the pandemic, right? So I didn't even, for the first year and a half, really get to do what I had envisioned I was going to be able to do when I took the job. I love working in the political environment. I have no political aspirations. I give credit to people that want to be in elected office. It's not something that I aspire to do. But I love working in that environment because you can really impact a lot, right, in government. And people really sometimes don't realize how much of an impact their government has on their daily lives. And it's wonderful to get to that point when I leave this job. I'm going to look back on it like I look back on my time at the parking authority and really realize, wow, my fingerprints, my DNA is on that organization. And that's things that I can take my kids back to and go, hey, I still do that. Even my first job, I did a tax credit affordable housing project in Sweetwater that I literally have driven my kids past and gone, hey, I built that, right? And that's a kind of a cool thing because that's brick and mortar, that stuff. Those are things that'll last 100 years potentially, right? And to know you played a role in it, it's kind of a good feeling. So
it is. And we're all called to do something. Mm-hmm. You were appointed city manager maybe a year before I got elected. Mm-hmm. A year before I got elected. A little more, actually. A little bit more than a year. And I believe that you have created unity, some synergy. The commission meetings are nowhere near as intense, fierce, long.
Well, you deserve a lot of credit for that, by the way, because, look, one of the things that was, having known you before you even took office, was there's a benefit to having a certain type of individual from a personality perspective, from an ego perspective. Chemistry matters on that dais between the 5 elected officials that are part of that legislative body. And having, every time you add or subtract, it changes the chemistry of it, right? But then to change that chemistry and then put you in a position as chair, that really was what made the difference, I think, in really creating a different dynamic in that dais. And I knew it immediately the second you were elevated to the chairwoman's position. I thought this is going to be a game changer for us in terms of how meetings are managed, right? How that interactions happens. Look, the 5 elected officials aren't always going to agree on things.
And we don't.
And you don't. But civility, professionalism, those are all very important in terms of the public's perception of how we do business.
Right.
And we had lost it. We had. I mean, meetings were very contentious, and I think that, a lot of factors went into play to kind of get us grounded again, right, in terms of that process. And I don't, as much as I may have played a role behind the scenes. You were the forward-facing, improvement there, and that's huge. That's a big reason why.
It's funny because, truth be told, I was terrified. Here I am. I just got elected to office for the first time. And then I'm tapped to be chair, not even a month later.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
Yeah, that's just normal fear, right? That's normal fear and anxiety, but you have the perfect makeup for it. So, I think that people are just built for it. You are. And I think it's a credit to the fact that, we don't always live up to our potential sometimes. You definitely did. And I got to applaud you for that. So.
I don't know. It's a lot of exercise.
It is. No,
It's a lot.
Everything's
No,
a heavy
it's
lift
the-
here.
the- no.
It really is.
Keeping the anxiety at bay is a lot of miles. It's
No.
a lot of miles. It's a
I
lot
know.
of running. It's
I
a lot
know.
of walking. It's a lot of clearing my head and getting prepared. And appreciation from my colleagues because they don't behave. We don't act like we did
No.
before I got elected.
Sometimes the sentiment behind the scenes doesn't translate to meetings, in part because your personality sort of manages some of that, and they have a respect for you, right? And there's a level that they don't, I think, want to. If you allow them sometimes to kind of stretch the boundaries of their interaction, sometimes that they'll run with it as far as they can take it, right? I think, and I say this, and it is amazing to watch. Women just have the ability to temper some of that natural testosterone that we have as men.
Yes.
To
and
sort
I was so happy when we had a second woman.
it really changed the
I
dynamic.
was so happy,
That's amazing.
those naysayers and the haters and, oh, how are they going to behave to women? How else are we going to behave? I didn't understand that at all. Like, we're going to welcome her.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do great things. I happen to like all of my colleagues. I like them all. I respect them all. I know that they are passionate about their districts and about serving their districts. What I like about you is you're very passionate about service as well. You've been a mentor, volunteer at Northwestern Senior High School for how many years?
So I was there, and I did it right up until I took this job because time just wouldn't permit it, but I did that for 13 years. So I had the pleasure of spending a lot of time watching that school really transform itself. Had two amazing principals when I was there, Charles Hankerson and Wallace Aristide, and they really took that school from an F school with a 49% graduation rate to when Wallace left a couple of years ago, their graduation rate was about 92 or 93%. And they were a solid C/B school. At one point, we had gotten to an A. That school, every time I drive by it, every time I'm in Liberty City, I'll take a moment to go by the school. And I still have relationships there, even though in education, there's a lot of transition over time.
Right.
But like example, I just have a lot of love for what we did there, the students there, the faculty there was amazing. And to this day, Wallace is one of my best friends. I mean, I have lunch with him every so often. He was at my 50th birthday party. He's somebody I became very close to. It's hard not to. He's just that kind of person. He's got a great personality. But there's friendships and relationships I took from that experience that I'll have for the rest of my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times.
Without a doubt.
Your team, your administrative team, your assistant city managers, they are awesome. How did you assemble that motley crew?
Natasha came a little later, really through the recommendation of Larry, because I was really looking for somebody to step into one of the assistant city manager roles. And immediately when I met her, I said to myself, she's perfect.
She's special.
She really is.
She is special.
She has a intelligence, but the kind of intelligence that's very practical, and she connects with people really well. And you need that when you're a good manager, to be a good manager, and to be able to problem solve and all the skills you need.
She's humble.
No, she has a tremendous amount of humility. And
she absolutely does.
Yeah.
I don't see her often upset.
Oh, no, she's not.
Because she's so level-headed. She's so calm.
She is.
She often calms me down.
Yeah.
She often calms me. No. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that today. No.
Yeah, she's an amazing leader. She has a very bright future when it comes to government and administration. For her, I think the sky's the limit. However she wants to take her professional life, I'm happy and lucky to have her. Larry was somebody that I'd known for 20-something years and had a very close relationship with as well. And he's somebody that, throughout the years, no matter his professional, changes and how his professional life evolved, we always stayed very close and very connected. And when the opportunity came to replace the CFO, I was really consulting him for, hey, what do you think? I'm looking for this kind of candidates. We were talking about different potential individuals, and he kind of he said something at one point in that process, and I said, is it something you might want to come back and do? And we had a conversation about it. He said, yeah. He said, it'd only be to work with you. And I said, well, I'm not going anywhere, so I'm not going to hire you and then leave. So he is somebody I would trust with my life. We have that kind of relationship. He is incredibly smart. He also has really good instincts, really works well with his, coworkers and subordinates. Chief Morales is somebody that obviously I hired. And I had a long-standing relationship with him too, from when he was commander in the Grove. So, and he's been a really good addition to that senior management team as well. So, I think the team is finally where I wanted it to be, with that group. And then I have other obviously direct reports, but they're all phenomenal. And the team is finally at a point. I think through just attrition and/or just making changes, we've really elevated the talent level at the city, even at the department director level, at in every one of our different departments and disciplines. And I got to tell you, if I left tomorrow, I'd be really proud of this group and the team we've put together. And I think it's probably about the best. And not really trying to toot my own horn, but it really is probably one of the best groups since I've been connected with the city. Just an overall talent and ability. I mean, look at planning, Lakeisha.
Oh my gosh.
Look at zoning, Dan. I mean, they're just a great group. Really good hires.
They are.
We were very patient with how we filled those positions, and it really paid off.
Lakeisha is amazing.
She's a superstar.
She is.
She really is.
And she gets it.
She does.
She gets it.
She does.
All of them, actually. I love your team. Mm-hmm. Because they're so responsive. Mm-hmm. And I can't say it's just because they're responsive to me, because they're responsive to the community.
Yep.
And each of them, they teach me. And I love that, because you come into this position, you don't know everything. Zoning is a whole language of its own.
It is.
It's
especially
a whole,
Miami's zoning code.
It's a whole nother
language.
Correct. And they take their time with me because I want to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an attorney. I can't count. Larry explains stuff to me in a way that I understand. And I say, explain it to me like I'm 6, so that I get it. And none of them talk over my head. None of them come to me at the high level. Lakeisha says it all the time. She says a very low level understanding.
Yeah, she'll ask that. She'll actually ask that in briefings. When she's briefing, we're talking to elected officials, not just you. She'll go, do you want the doctorate or PhD level of this, or do you want me to explain it to you in terms that I would explain to anybody else, right? Because that's just a fair way to do it, and that's common sense. And, as much your feedback right now mirrors a lot of what I get from our constituents, whether they be, property owners, business owners, developers, lawyers, land use. They all rave about their interactions, particularly with Lakeisha and Dan and that group. They really do. They are constantly giving me that really incredible positive feedback. And, I try to make sure I pass that on to them, because they need to know, hey, look, in spite of what people tell you and the criticisms you get, the outside world really does have a lot of respect for the service you're providing.
And I feel as if, while they're not elected officials, their passion for what they do is service.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
When you cut away everything, the common denominator is service, and that's what they're doing. And that's what I find that they do with me. They help me deliver service to the community, and I appreciate that. I do try to tell them myself each time, I get an opportunity. I do try to say, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. This was great.
You do a good job.
And because it's true, they really do. And we have, while the city of Miami has its challenges, for the most part, it's a great place. And we're doing what we can with respect to affordable housing, because this housing crisis, it's not just the city of Miami. It's bad here, though. But it's
bad.
It's the U.S.
Yeah.
It's not just the city of Miami.
No,
it's
we're not.
The U.S.
We're not in a bubble, but it's funny because I was literally having this conversation with somebody the other day about, what are the two most critical impacts, in terms of the economic development of the city long term, talking the next 10 to 20 years. And it's resiliency, climate change, and housing. Those are the two.
Right.
If we can figure out a way to address those two, we ensure that the city stays viable for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And although, managers by nature are not long tenured jobs. Right? Anything I can do while I'm here to impact that and make sure that there's sustainability to that, and anything you can do as an elected official, because your tenure's not unlimited either, there's term limits. And so, we have an obligation to think 10 years down the road and 20 years down the road, because if we don't do it and set the foundation for it, then we're just going to keep kicking the can on it.
And that's no bueno.
That's a travesty.
No bueno.
No,
right.
It just is.
And that's where you find my impatience. I want stuff to move.
Yep.
I want projects in my district. I keep my eyes on it. I can't wait 2 years to see something happen. I don't have that kind of time, which is why I'm so passionate about, particularly with housing. We have to create affordable housing for our residents, because the homeless issue is now, our homeless population is not what traditionally looked like homeless. They're regular people who can't pay their rent and find themselves homeless now. And they have jobs. And they can't keep up.
Yeah.
So I'm very passionate about that. I don't know what my legacy will be. I don't even really understand what that means, because people tell me that all the time. I'm day by day, but I know that I have to create affordable housing. I have to make an impact. I met a man today on my way here. I was at the grocery, and he said, how can I get into a senior affordable housing development? I'm going to be 67 next year, and the rents, I'm struggling. I referred him to Block 55. I was like, I got you. I've got you. I got his name. Yeah. I'm going to submit it so that he can get an application and be considered, because that's an awesome project, and it's a game changer for our seniors. But there's so much that we need to do that we don't have time to waste.
No, and a big problem we have is that dissemination of information, right? Because like he came to you because he doesn't really know, right?
Right.
He doesn't have a mechanism or a resource. And part of the problem we have today in particular is we have those resources available. We have the ways to communicate it. But the volume in terms of the overload of information that gets pushed out to individuals, no matter what age you are, right, is just so overwhelming that a lot of people can't filter through it. So, if they just did a standard Google search, it's going to take them a while to filter through the stuff that really doesn't matter to get to what really does, and because we're just so overwhelmed, right? And so we've got to find really unique ways to communicate and really expose our residents, our business owners to, what kind of resources are available to them. And then, the other thing we got to do, and it's probably one of the things that would be great to try to tackle, at least, while we're here, is we also have government entities and government agencies that overlap and compete with each other to provide resources instead of leveraging them better.
Yes.
And there's this competition that happens, and everybody wants to get a program out, but a lot of times we're not leveraging our resources as well as we could be. And that's something that you see, I realized that pretty early on, and that's something we should also be working on. A better working relationship at every level of government, right?
Yes.
So that whatever resources are available at the federal, state, or county or local level are all complementing each other versus running in parallel tracks.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to do. The podcast is to give disseminate information with our social media, to disseminate information, our emails. We send emails all day, every day. News you can use or share. I want to get the information out, and we have a very active relationship with our HOAs so that we can get the information out, because knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. That's what Constituent Tuesday is about. Come and see me, and I'm here. And the only way you can really connect with the community is by getting out there and being with them.
There's no better way to do it. And as an elected official, and through the extension of your staff, right, their residents, business owners, really will find and be drawn to that, any opportunity they get. So the more you make it available, right, they may miss the first 4 or 5, and then word of mouth starts to spread, and people go, okay, this is available to you, go attend.
I think one of the smartest things the city did was creating the district offices for commissioners. That holds us accountable, because the community can walk into our office Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 at any time, and get information. We're a resource, and it holds us accountable. I think that's one of the smartest things the city has done, creating the district offices.
It is. There is a level of accountability, and a level of access that they didn't have before when it was just net offices.
Well, we've reached the segment in my podcast where we try to get to know our guests a little bit. I want our audience, our viewers, our listeners to kind of get to know you. So I have these 5 questions that I ask. And the first question is, if you could have dinner with anyone in this world, living or dead, who would you have dinner with?
Wow, I was just thinking about this the other day. Currently, and I'll use it because it's a recent reference for me, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Really?
Yeah. He's somebody that I admire. I saw his documentary on a lot of the, he's very much a self-made man, right? And a self-made man in 3 different arenas, sports, bodybuilding, acting, producing, and then politics. But specifically his political instincts, right? Because if you look at his tenure in California, he was a guy that was almost entirely focused on, I have an agenda, I need to move this thing along, I need to reach across, forget party affiliation, party lines. We need to build good policy, and to do that, I need to be able to communicate with everyone. And I just downloaded his book. I'm going to start reading it. He just published a new book, and he'd be somebody I'd love to have dinner with. He's
a great public speaker too. He gives very inspirational.
Incredibly intelligent.
Yes.
He's just a very intelligent person.
And came from little means.
nothing. He moved to this country with not a dime. And you know, like I said, he's very much a self-made person. I have the utmost admiration for people who do that. And then also have the ability to be successful in a lot of different ways, right?
Right.
And that just shows that you're just an incredible leader and very smart, and that's just a skill set and an ability that not a lot of people have. So
Leads me to my next question. What's your favorite book? You said you were going to download his book. What do you read on?
So I like to read a lot of history, and I'm a big historical guy. One of the most recent books, and I haven't done a lot of reading recently, just because of, you know, but I downloaded his book as an audiobook because I'm about to take a trip and I'll listen to it. But you know, I loved Ulysses S. Grant's book. It just was really powerful for me. Just that whole period of our country's history is, to me, the Civil War was just a point in time when things could have really fallen apart for our democracy. And, you know, we were dealing with a lot of, obviously, you know, social issues on top of economic issues, right? And it's just amazing to see how some individuals sort of weave their way through that as leaders. And I'm amazed by that. So that was a book that I, you know, can tell you that meant a lot to me.
For me, it's Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln was...
Another great book, yeah.
Yeah, he did some, in his time, he did some amazing things.
No, he's remarkable, and the timing for him, as with the type of leader he was perfectly suited for that period in our country's history. He was.
I love how he reached across to his enemies.
He did. And by the way, if you look at history, the really successful leaders, forget whether they're in politics, in business, they understand the value of network.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And relationships. And if you don't grasp that, and I apply it to my everyday world, because look, it's a pretty diverse group, that those 5 commissioners and our mayor, right? You're all very different.
Very.
And so I have to kind of be a chameleon sometimes, right? I have to be able to communicate in a way that is equal to everyone, right? I don't feel like I have the luxury of being closer to anyone than the other, but you know, everybody needs to feel like, hey, they get their moment.
Everyone needs to feel like they're heard.
They're heard, and on equal terms. And I think, you know, we're losing some of that. And it was funny because I saw an interview going back to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he said, you know, we're in a world where back when I was, you know, when I came to this country, he says, very volatile time, but leaders, especially political leaders, felt more of an obligation to their country than they did their party, right? And he says now we've transitioned to where their allegiances are to their party politics,
right,
and the party platform versus, hey, what's best for the country. And he says there were times that I had, you know, a belief, a fundamental political belief, but it didn't quite marry what I was trying to do for the state of California. He was using that example. And
I agree with you.
It's true.
I believe our leader and whoever is going to be our president should care about everybody. You can't exclude anyone because we're all part of these United States. I agree with you on that. Next question. Do you have a favorite song?
Oof. Yeah, I think I'd get kicked in the butt if I didn't say this. All of Me by John Legend. It's my wedding song. So,
Aww.
so that one has to be the favorite. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a big
very sappy
John Legend fan, but that has to be
very sappy there.
I'll throw that one out there.
Okay, that's going to get you brownie points.
Well, Sheila watches this. Now I got to push it on her.
Right.
I got to send her. I got to forward her the way and just say, mark minute number 25.
What is the most dangerous thing you do?
Oh, drive. I think driving in the cities and in the county sometimes can be an experience. Yeah, I'm pretty risk averse now. I don't do things, I'm not like when I was 20 and, I wanted to skydive and, do things that were a little more adventurous. I think you get a little older, you get a little way more conservative. And I think obviously you also have kids, you feel like you have an obligation to be relatively, take good care of yourself. And so I don't do any crazy stuff anymore. But, like any young man, I had my moments. So, I've kind of given those up.
Okay. If you could tell your 20-year-old self something, give your 20-year-old self some advice, what would you tell yourself?
Patience. Be more patient. I think that's a skill that not a lot of 20-year-olds have, just, in general. And there are certain decisions I made. I think I should have been more patient, both professionally and personally. And I think that's an ability, right? That if you really can develop that at a young age, a lot of stuff will come to you easier versus having to do it the hard way.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the struggle. And, when you're young, you want everything tomorrow. And sometimes you got to play the long game. It doesn't, rushing certain things doesn't.
And faith. Patience and faith.
And faith that it'll happen. Yeah. I think some of that impatience is the fact that you don't believe.
Right.
You don't trust it. Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, that is a wrap for us. Thank you for being on the Kingdom Podcast, where all voices are heard.
There we go.
All voices are heard. Thank you so much. Everyone, thank you for your support, for your viewership, for your listenership. This is the Kingdom Podcast signing off. I am your host, Christine King. Thank you.